Hi everyone, welcome to Gumballology. I hope you're all doing well and ready to drift off to something meaningful tonight. Today, I want to argue that the amazing world of Gumball offers genuine life lessons that viewers of all ages can carry forward into their own lives. By examining how Gumball learns that chaos and responsibility can coexist, how Darwin shows that kindness doesn't mean weakness, how the Watterson family demonstrates that being broke doesn't mean being broken, and how the show itself teaches that you can critique the world while still finding joy in it. We can understand why this series has taught millions of people how to approach life with humor, honesty, and heart. But before we begin, I'd just like to kindly ask you all to subscribe. It's completely free, and it really helps us improve the videos for this wonderful community we've managed to build. Anyway, that's enough. Let's begin. Accept that you're a disaster, and love yourself anyway. Gumball Watterson is a mess. This is not an insult. This is not an exaggeration. This is literally the premise of his character. He is a 12-year-old blue cat who makes terrible decisions constantly. He lies to his friends. He schemes to get out of work. He breaks things. He hurts people accidentally. He acts before thinking. He creates chaos wherever he goes. He is selfish and impulsive, and often completely oblivious to how his actions affect others. And the show does not pretend otherwise. The show does not make excuses for him. The show just shows you who Gumball is, flaws and all, and then shows you that he can still be a good person, that he can still be loved, that being a disaster does not disqualify you from having a meaningful life. This is the first lesson the amazing world of Gumball teaches. Accept that you are a disaster and love yourself anyway. You are going to make mistakes. You are going to mess things up. You are going to be selfish sometimes. You are going to act impulsively. You are going to create problems. And none of this makes you irredeemable. None of this makes you unworthy of love. None of this means you should give up on yourself. Being flawed is not the same as being broken. Being messy is not the same as being worthless. You can acknowledge all your problems and still deserve kindness, including kindness from yourself. In The Responsible, one of the early episodes, Gumball is put in charge of his younger brother Darwin for the day. Their mother Nicole leaves him with one simple instruction: keep Darwin safe. And Gumball immediately fails at this. He gets distracted. He forgets Darwin is in the bathtub. Darwin nearly drowns. Then Darwin gets electrocuted. Then Darwin gets his head stuck in a jar. Every single thing that could go wrong goes wrong, and it is all Gumball's fault. He is not capable of the responsibility he has been given. He is not mature enough. He is not careful enough. He is not paying attention. But here is what matters. When Nicole comes home and sees the disaster, when she sees that Darwin is injured and traumatized, and that Gumball failed completely at his one job, she does not tell Gumball he is worthless. She does not say he will never be responsible. She just acknowledges that he is not ready for this level of responsibility yet, that he needs more time to mature, that failure does not define his future. And Gumball accepts this. He does not spiral into self-hatred. He does not decide he is a terrible person. He just accepts that he messed up and that he will do better next time. This episode establishes a pattern that continues throughout the entire series. Gumball messes up. Gumball faces consequences. Gumball learns something. And then Gumball moves on without letting the failure destroy his sense of self. He maintains his confidence, even though he has no real reason to be confident. He maintains his belief that he is a good person, even though the evidence often suggests otherwise. And this is not delusion. This is not narcissism. This is healthy self-acceptance. This is understanding that your mistakes do not define your worth. In the kiss, Gumball accidentally kisses his grandmother. This sounds ridiculous. It is ridiculous. But the situation is genuinely traumatic for Gumball. He is humiliated. Everyone at school finds out. Everyone makes fun of him. And Gumball has to walk around knowing that he did something incredibly embarrassing and that everyone knows about it. This is the kind of mistake that could destroy someone's self-esteem, the kind of social disaster that could make you want to disappear. But Gumball does not disappear. He does not let the embarrassment define him. He faces it. He endures the mockery. He accepts that yes, this happened, and yes, it is embarrassing, and yes, people are going to make fun of him, and none of that means he has to hate himself. He can be embarrassed and still be okay. He can make a humiliating mistake and still show up to school the next day. He can be the subject of jokes and still maintain his dignity. This is resilience. This is self-acceptance in action. The episode shows that Gumball's ability to bounce back from disasters is not because he is oblivious or stupid. It is because he has a fundamental belief that he is worthy of existence, even when he messes up. He does not require perfection from himself. He does not demand that he never make mistakes. He just accepts that mistakes are part of life, and that making them does not make him less valuable as a person. In The Flakers, Gumball and Darwin fake being sick to avoid going to school. They create elaborate symptoms. They manipulate their parents. They lie constantly to maintain the deception. And their plan works. They get to stay home. They get to play video games all day. They get exactly what they wanted. But then things go wrong. Their father, Richard, gets sick for real. Their mother, Nicole, has to work. And Gumball and Darwin are forced to take care of Richard, which turns out to be much harder and more disgusting than they expected. By the end of the episode, Gumball and Darwin realize that school would have been easier than dealing with their sick father. They realize that their scheme backfired. They realize that they created more problems for themselves than they solved, and they have to live with the consequences of their choices. But the show does not present this as Gumball learning to never lie again. The show does not present this as Gumball becoming a better person. The show just presents this as Gumball learning that this particular scheme did not work out the way he hoped. And this is important because real growth is not linear. Real people do not learn lessons permanently. Gumball will lie again. Gumball will scheme again. Gumball will make similar mistakes again, because that is who he is. That is his nature. And the show accepts this. The show does not demand that Gumball transform into a perfect child. The show just shows him learning situational lessons while remaining fundamentally himself. In The Procrastinators, Gumball and Darwin have to take out the trash. This is a simple chore. This is something that should take 5 minutes. But Gumball keeps putting it off. He finds excuses. He invents reasons why it can wait. He distracts himself with other activities, and the trash piles up. It grows. It becomes a mountain. It becomes sentient. It literally becomes alive and starts chasing them because they procrastinated for so long. This is an absurd exaggeration of what happens when you avoid responsibilities. But it is also emotionally true. When you procrastinate, problems grow. When you avoid dealing with things, they become bigger and harder to handle. When you put off simple tasks, they transform into monsters that chase you. And Gumball experiences this. He creates a disaster through his own avoidance. He makes his life harder through his own choices. But the episode does not end with Gumball promising to never procrastinate again. It ends with Gumball defeating the trash monster and then immediately going back to his normal behavior. Because Gumball is a procrastinator. That is who he is. And the show accepts this about him. The show does not demand that he fix this fundamental aspect of his personality. The show just shows him dealing with the consequences of being who he is. This teaches you something important about self-acceptance. You do not have to fix everything about yourself. You do not have to become perfect. You just have to manage the consequences of your flaws. You have to understand how your personality creates problems and then deal with those problems without hating yourself for having them in the first place. Gumball is a procrastinator. He knows this about himself. He accepts this about himself. He just also accepts that this means he will sometimes have to fight literal trash monsters. In the fury, Nicole's past comes back to haunt her. We learn that Nicole was also a disaster when she was younger. She was violent and uncontrolled and caused massive damage. And she has worked incredibly hard to become more disciplined and responsible. But the episode shows that her chaotic nature is still there. It is still part of who she is. She has just learned to manage it. And when she needs to, when her family is threatened, she unleashes that chaos again. This shows Gumball that even his incredibly competent mother is fundamentally messy, that she is not perfect, that she has the same chaotic energy he does, and she has just learned to channel it more effectively. This gives Gumball hope. This shows him that he does not have to stop being who he is. He just has to learn to manage who he is. He does not have to become a different person. He just has to become a more skilled version of himself. Throughout the entire series, Gumball remains a disaster. He does not fundamentally change. He does not transform into a responsible, thoughtful, careful person. He stays impulsive. He stays selfish. He stays chaotic. But he also stays lovable. He also stays valuable. He also stays worthy of his family's love and his friends' loyalty. And the show never wavers on this. The show never suggests that Gumball needs to fix himself before he deserves acceptance. The show just accepts him as he is. This is the complete lesson about self-acceptance. You are a disaster. You know you are a disaster. Everyone around you knows you are a disaster, and that is okay. You can acknowledge all your flaws and still be worthy of love. You can admit all your mistakes and still be worthy of respect. You can accept that you create chaos and still be worthy of existing. Being a mess is not a moral failing. It is just a personality type, and you can be that personality type while still being a good person. So accept that you are a disaster and love yourself anyway. Stop waiting until you fix everything before you allow yourself self-compassion. Stop demanding perfection before you grant yourself dignity. Stop believing that your mistakes disqualify you from deserving kindness. You mess up. Everyone messes up. And messing up does not make you worthless. It makes you human. Accept your humanity. Accept your chaos. Accept your flaws. And love yourself despite them. Or better yet, love yourself, including them. That is what Gumball teaches. That is what self-acceptance requires. And that is what you can carry forward into your own life. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Accepting your own chaos is essential, but learning that reality itself is negotiable changes everything about how you approach problems. Reality is more flexible than you think. The amazing world of Gumball takes place in a universe where literally anything can happen. The characters are different species, with different art styles living together in the same town. The laws of physics change depending on what the plot requires. Time travel exists. Magic exists. Consciousness can be transferred between bodies. Objects come to life. Reality bends and breaks and reforms constantly, and the characters just accept this. They do not question why the world works this way. They do not demand logical consistency. They just adapt to whatever bizarre circumstance they find themselves in and keep moving forward. This is the second lesson the amazing world of Gumball teaches. Reality is more flexible than you think. The rules you believe govern the world are not as fixed as they seem. The limitations you accept as immutable are often just habits of thought. The boundaries you respect as absolute are frequently just social constructs. And when you realize this, when you truly understand that reality is negotiable, you gain access to solutions that seemed impossible before. You stop accepting that things have to be the way they are. You start asking what else might be possible. You experiment. You push boundaries. You discover that the world has more give than you thought. In the remote, the Watterson family fights over control of the TV remote. This is a normal family conflict. Everyone wants to watch something different. But the episode escalates this conflict into absurdity. The remote becomes a mystical object of power. Control of the remote means control of reality itself, and the family goes to increasingly extreme lengths to possess it. They form alliances. They betray each other. They employ elaborate strategies. And through all of this, the show is making a point about how arbitrary power structures are. The remote only has power because everyone agrees it has power. If the family simply agreed to share or take turns, the remote would lose its importance. But they have all bought into the belief system that possessing the remote equals having control. And this belief system creates the conflict. The episode shows that most power structures work this way. They are maintained by collective agreement to treat certain things as important. And if you stop agreeing, if you stop participating in the belief system, the power structure loses its force. This teaches you that many of the rules you follow are optional. Many of the limitations you accept are self-imposed. Many of the power structures you respect only have power because you grant them power. And when you recognize this, you can choose differently. You can opt out of systems that do not serve you. You can refuse to participate in hierarchies that harm you. You can stop treating arbitrary rules as sacred laws. This is not chaos. This is agency. This is recognizing where you actually have choices. In the job, Richard gets a job, and reality falls apart. The universe itself cannot handle Richard being employed. His existence as a working person is so fundamentally contradictory to the nature of reality that everything starts breaking down. Physics stops working correctly. Time becomes unstable. The fabric of existence begins to tear, and the family has to convince Richard to quit his job to save the universe. This is absurd. This is comedy. But it is also making a serious point. Some people do not fit into conventional systems. Some people are fundamentally incompatible with standard expectations. And forcing them into those systems does not just hurt them, it damages everything around them. Richard cannot work. The universe has structured itself around Richard being unemployed, and trying to change this fundamental aspect of reality causes catastrophic consequences. This teaches that fighting your own nature is destructive, that trying to force yourself into roles that contradict who you are creates problems beyond just your own suffering, that sometimes the right response is not to change yourself, but to change the system. Richard does not need to become employable. The world needs to make space for people who are unemployable, and the show argues that this is possible. That reality can accommodate people who do not fit standard templates, but only if we stop insisting that everyone must conform. In The Money, the Watterson family discovers that money is a social construct that they can manipulate. They realize that currency only has value because everyone agrees it has value, and they start experimenting with creating their own forms of exchange. They barter, they trade favors, they create alternative economic systems, and for a while, this works. They manage to survive without participating in the conventional monetary system, but eventually, they have to re-engage with normal economics because they exist within a larger society that requires conventional currency. The episode shows that while reality is flexible, it is not infinitely flexible. You can bend rules within your own sphere of influence. You can create alternative systems within communities that agree to them, but you cannot completely opt out of large-scale systems that you are embedded in. You have to negotiate between your desire for alternatives and the practical necessities of functioning within society. This teaches nuance about flexibility. Reality is more negotiable than you think, but it is not completely malleable. You have agency, but agency has limits. You can push boundaries, but pushing too hard can break things in ways that harm you. The wisdom is knowing where you can flex the rules and where you need to work within them. The wisdom is understanding which battles are worth fighting and which constraints are better accepted and worked around. In The Upgrade, Bober the robot decides to upgrade himself. He improves his processing power. He increases his capabilities. He becomes more advanced. And this should be good. This should make him better. But instead, it makes him incompatible with everyone around him. He becomes too efficient, too logical, too optimized, and he loses his ability to connect with others. His upgrades made him technically superior, but socially worthless. The episode shows that the goal is not to become perfect. The goal is to remain compatible with the world you live in. Bober has to downgrade himself. He has to make himself less capable. He has to accept limitations that seem arbitrary. But these limitations are what allow him to function within his community. And functioning within community is more important than individual optimization. This teaches that flexibility requires balance. You want to push boundaries. You want to explore what is possible, but you also need to maintain connection. You need to remain legible to others. You need to function within shared systems, even as you experiment with alternatives. The art is being flexible enough to discover new possibilities while remaining integrated enough to maintain relationships and practical functionality. In The Others, Gumball and Darwin realize that they are not the main characters in everyone else's story. They discover that other people experience themselves as the protagonists of their own lives, that the world does not revolve around Gumball and Darwin, that everyone has their own perspective where they are central, and the Wattersons are just background characters. This is a profound shift in perspective. This is recognizing that reality is subjective, that there is no single objective viewpoint, that the world looks different depending on where you are standing. This teaches epistemic humility. Your experience of reality is just one experience. Your perspective is just one perspective. And other people's perspectives are just as valid as yours, even when they contradict yours. The world is not one thing. It is many things, simultaneously, depending on who is looking at it. And recognizing this multiplicity is what allows you to negotiate reality more effectively. When you understand that your view is not the only view, you gain access to other ways of seeing. You can borrow perspectives. You can try on different frameworks. You can experiment with different ways of interpreting situations. And this flexibility of interpretation gives you more options for action. In the future, the Watterson kids discover that their futures are not fixed. They see visions of multiple possible timelines. They see different versions of themselves, making different choices, leading to different outcomes. And they realize that the future is not predetermined, that their choices matter, that they have agency over what happens next. This is simultaneously empowering and terrifying. Because if the future is not fixed, then you have responsibility for shaping it. You cannot blame fate. You cannot resign yourself to inevitability. You have to decide what you want and work toward it. This teaches that temporal reality is negotiable. The future has not happened yet. You have influence over it. Your choices today create your circumstances tomorrow. And while you cannot control everything, while randomness and other people's choices also shape outcomes, you have more power than you think. Most people treat the future as if it is already determined, as if they are passengers watching their lives unfold. But you are not a passenger. You are making choices constantly that alter trajectories. And recognizing this agency is what allows you to exercise it effectively. In the disaster, time itself breaks. Rob gains control over a universal remote that can rewind reality, and he uses this power to try to destroy the Watterson family. He keeps rewinding time and changing events to create increasingly terrible outcomes, and Gumball has to figure out how to stop him. This requires Gumball to think about time non-linearly, to strategize across multiple timelines, to plant seeds in one iteration that pay off in future iterations, to use knowledge from failed timelines to succeed in the current one. The episode shows that even the most fundamental aspects of reality, like the linear flow of time, are not as fixed as they seem. Time can be manipulated. Cause and effect can be reordered. The past can influence the future in ways that seem impossible from a linear perspective. And when you understand this, when you stop thinking of time as a straight line and start thinking of it as a malleable dimension, you gain access to different strategic possibilities. You can prepare for futures that have not happened yet. You can learn from mistakes that technically occurred in alternate timelines. You can use meta-knowledge to navigate reality more effectively. In the Inquisition, the entire universe is revealed to be potentially erasable. A force threatens to eliminate everyone and replace them with more palatable versions. The characters face the possibility of being deleted from reality itself, and they have to fight to maintain their existence. This is the ultimate flexibility of reality. Even existence itself is not guaranteed. Even being real is contingent, and recognizing this precariousness is what gives the characters urgency, what makes them fight, what makes them value their reality, even with all its flaws. This teaches that the fact that things exist does not mean they must exist, that the world you live in is one possibility among many, that reality could be different, that nothing is guaranteed to continue just because it has been happening. And this recognition should not lead to nihilism. It should lead to active engagement. If reality is contingent, if existence requires maintenance, if the world you want requires work to preserve, then you have responsibility to do that work. You have reason to participate. You have motivation to fight for the world you want, rather than passively accepting the world you have. Throughout the series, characters routinely break the fourth wall. They acknowledge they are in a cartoon. They reference the show's budget and production constraints. They talk directly to the audience. They manipulate their own narrative. And this meta-awareness gives them power. When you understand the framework you exist within, when you see the rules of the game you are playing, you gain the ability to play that game more strategically. You stop being subject to rules unconsciously and start engaging with rules consciously. This teaches that meta-awareness is power. Understanding the systems you operate within gives you leverage. Seeing the frameworks that shape your behavior allows you to work with them or against them intentionally. Most people never examine the rules they follow. They just follow them automatically. But when you step back and look at the rules, when you see them as constructed rather than natural, you gain agency. You can choose which rules to follow, which to bend, which to break, which to fight to change. So understand that reality is more flexible than you think. The rules you believe are fixed are often negotiable. The limitations you accept as absolute are frequently malleable. The systems you treat as inevitable are actually contingent. And recognizing this flexibility gives you agency, gives you options, gives you the ability to experiment with different approaches. Stop accepting that things must be the way they are. Start asking what else might be possible. Push boundaries, test limits. Discover that the world has more give than you thought. Reality is flexible. Use that flexibility. That is what Gumball teaches. That is what agency requires. And that is what you can carry forward into your own life. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Understanding reality's flexibility opens possibilities, but learning that absurdity is the default state of existence helps you navigate those possibilities without losing your mind. Absurdity is the default. Coherence is the exception. Nothing in the amazing world of Gumball makes sense. A blue cat and an orange fish are brothers. A pink rabbit works in retail. A balloon is a person. A sentient banana dates a penny. A T-Rex is a child. Everyone is a different species. Everyone is drawn in a different art style. The town of Elmore contains every possible type of being living together without explanation. And the show does not explain this. The show does not provide lore about how this happened. The show does not create a coherent backstory that justifies why reality works this way. The show just presents this as how things are. And the characters accept it. They do not question why the world is absurd. They just live in the absurdity and deal with whatever bizarre situation arises. This is the third lesson the amazing world of Gumball teaches. Absurdity is the default. Coherence is the exception. The world does not make sense. Life is random and chaotic and contradictory. Things happen for no reason. Situations arise that defy logic. People behave in ways that contradict their stated values, and expecting the world to be rational, expecting life to follow clear rules, expecting situations to resolve neatly, this expectation will drive you insane. The world is absurd. Accept this. Stop fighting against the fundamental nature of reality. Stop demanding that chaos explain itself. Just learn to navigate absurdity with grace and humor. In the name, Gumball discovers that his real name is not Gumball. His real name is Zach, and he has been living under a nickname his entire life without knowing it. This should be traumatic. This should create an identity crisis. Gumball should be devastated to learn that his sense of self is based on a misunderstanding. But instead, he just accepts it. He shrugs. He decides that Gumball is who he is, regardless of what his legal name is. He refuses to let this absurd revelation change how he sees himself. The episode shows that identity is arbitrary. Names are arbitrary. The labels you use to define yourself are constructs. And when you realize this, when you understand that who you are is not determined by external classifications, you gain freedom. You can choose who you want to be. You can reject definitions that do not fit. You can embrace labels that feel right, regardless of whether they are technically accurate. Gumball is Gumball because he decided to be Gumball, not because someone named him that at birth. This teaches that meaning is constructed, not discovered. You create significance through your choices and interpretations. The world does not hand you a coherent narrative. You build narrative from random events. And this is both terrifying and liberating. Terrifying because nothing is guaranteed to make sense. Liberating because you have power to create sense where none exists naturally. In The Question, Gumball asks fundamental questions about existence. Why are we here? What is the meaning of life? How does anything work? And instead of providing answers, the episode just shows more questions. Every answer leads to more questions. Every explanation requires more explanation. And eventually, Gumball realizes that there might not be ultimate answers. That existence might not have a purpose that can be articulated. That the universe might not have underlying logic that human minds can comprehend. This is terrifying for Gumball. He wants answers. He wants to understand. He wants the world to make sense. But the world refuses to make sense. And Gumball has to decide how to respond to this. He can despair. He can give up. He can conclude that meaninglessness makes everything pointless. Or he can accept the absurdity and create his own meaning within it. He chooses the second option. He decides that even if the universe does not have inherent purpose, he can assign purpose to his own life. He can create meaning locally, even if meaning does not exist universally. This teaches existential resilience. You do not need the universe to make sense in order to make sense of your own life. You do not need ultimate answers in order to make local decisions. You do not need cosmic purpose in order to find personal purpose. Absurdity at the macro level does not prevent meaning at the micro level. You can build coherence in your own sphere, even while acknowledging that coherence does not exist in the larger universe. This is the art of living well in an absurd world. In the compilation, the episode is literally just a clip show, random moments from previous episodes stitched together with minimal connective tissue. No plot, no arc, just chaos. and the show presents this as a legitimate episode, as something worth watching, as valid content. This is the show acknowledging its own absurdity, acknowledging that it does not always need to make sense, that sometimes randomness is enough, that coherence is not always necessary for something to have value. This teaches that you do not need everything to fit together neatly. You do not need every experience to connect to a larger narrative. You can have random moments that do not serve a grand purpose. You can have days that do not teach lessons. You can have experiences that do not contribute to your character development. Sometimes things just happen, and that is fine. Not everything needs to be meaningful. Not everything needs to fit into your story. Some things are just random data points in a chaotic existence, and accepting this takes pressure off, lets you experience life without constantly demanding that every moment justify its existence. In The Worst, Richard is literally voted the worst person in Elmore. The entire town agrees that he is terrible. He wins the official title of Worst Citizen. And Richard is proud of this. He does not see it as an insult. He sees it as an achievement. He has successfully failed so completely that he won an award for failure, and he displays this award prominently. He treats it as validation rather than condemnation. This shows that value is subjective, that success and failure are matters of perspective, that even complete disaster can be reframed as accomplishment depending on how you look at it. Richard has embraced the absurdity of his existence so completely that he finds pride in being officially terrible. He has stopped trying to meet conventional standards. He has accepted that he will never be what society wants him to be. And instead of letting this destroy him, he celebrates it. He finds humor in it. He turns failure into identity. This teaches that you can reject the metrics that society uses to judge you. You do not have to accept that other people's standards define your worth. You can choose different criteria for success. You can value yourself based on what matters to you rather than what matters to others. And when you do this, when you stop trying to win games you never agreed to play, you gain freedom. You stop performing for judges who have no right to judge you. You start living according to your own values, regardless of external validation. In the advice, Mr. Small tries to give Gumball advice about life. He offers philosophical wisdom. He shares psychological insights. He provides guidance based on years of experience, and none of it helps. All of his advice is useless, not because it is bad advice, but because advice itself is limited, because no one else can tell you how to live your life, because wisdom is not transferable, because you have to figure things out yourself through experience. The episode shows that self-help culture is fundamentally absurd. The idea that someone can tell you the secrets to living well. The idea that there are rules that work for everyone. The idea that if you just follow the right system, you will be happy. All of this is nonsense. Life is too contextual. People are too different. Circumstances are too variable. What works for one person in one situation will not work for another person in a different situation. And pretending otherwise, pretending that universal advice exists, this is just another manifestation of the human desire for the world to make sense when it does not. This teaches that you have to develop your own wisdom through trial and error. You cannot outsource the work of figuring out how to live. You can learn from others' experiences. You can consider others' perspectives. But ultimately, you have to make your own choices. and live with your own consequences. No one else can tell you what to do. No one else has access to your full context. You are navigating absurdity alone, and accepting this aloneness is part of accepting absurdity. In the safety, Darwin becomes obsessed with safety. He tries to eliminate all risk from his life. He creates rules for every possible danger. He attempts to control every variable. He works to make the world predictable and safe. And this makes his life intolerable. The more he tries to control, the more anxious he becomes. The more he tries to eliminate risk, the more paralyzed he is. The attempt to create coherence and safety in an absurd world makes life unlivable. The episode shows that you cannot eliminate absurdity through control. You cannot make life safe through rules. You cannot create coherence through careful management. Chaos will always break through. Randomness will always intrude. The unexpected will always occur. And the attempt to prevent this, the attempt to force the world to be predictable, this attempt causes more suffering than the chaos itself would. This teaches that you have to accept risk. You have to tolerate uncertainty. You have to make peace with the fact that you cannot control everything. The world is absurd and dangerous and unpredictable, and you can either accept this and learn to navigate it with flexibility, or you can fight against it and make yourself miserable. Darwin learns to accept. He learns to take reasonable precautions without attempting total control. He learns to live with acceptable levels of risk, and this acceptance is what allows him to function. In the bus, the school bus becomes sentient and runs away. It has been taking children to school for years, and it is tired of this routine. It wants freedom. It wants adventure. It wants to experience life beyond its programmed function, and the episode treats this as reasonable. The bus's desire for liberation is presented as valid. The absurdity of a vehicle having existential crisis is not mocked. It is simply accepted as another bizarre thing that happens in this bizarre world. This shows that the show does not distinguish between different levels of absurdity. Everything is equally absurd. A bus having feelings is no more strange than a fish growing legs and becoming a person. A T-Rex being a child is no weirder than money being a social construct. The show flattens all absurdity into equivalence, and this flattening forces viewers to recognize that their own reality is just as absurd as the show's reality. We live in a world where abstract concepts like nations and corporations are treated as real entities, where colored paper represents value, where imaginary lines on maps determine your legal rights. Our world is just as incoherent as Elmore. We have just normalized our absurdity. This teaches that recognizing absurdity in fiction helps you recognize absurdity in reality. Once you see how arbitrary the rules of Gumball's world are, you start noticing how arbitrary the rules of your world are. And this recognition is liberating. Because if rules are arbitrary, they can be changed. If systems are absurd, they can be rebuilt. If reality is incoherent, you have permission to stop expecting coherence and start creating meaning on your own terms. In The Anybody, Gumball discovers that anyone can become the protagonist, that his role as main character is not permanent, that someone else could take over the show if they wanted. This meta-narrative twist shows that even narrative structure is absurd. Even the roles people play in stories are arbitrary. And when you realize that protagonist status is negotiable, you realize that all status is negotiable, that hierarchies are performed rather than real, that your position in life is not fixed, but fluid. This teaches that you can rewrite your role. You can change your narrative. You can shift from supporting character to protagonist in your own life. You do not have to accept the role that others have cast you in. You do not have to remain in the position you have been occupying. You can claim agency. You can center yourself. You can make your story about you rather than about serving someone else's story. This is not selfishness. This is recognizing that narrative roles are arbitrary and choosing to assign yourself a role that serves you. Throughout the series, logic is optional. Things happen because they are funny or interesting, not because they make sense. Plot holes are acknowledged and ignored. Continuity is treated as a suggestion rather than a rule, and the show does this deliberately. This is not sloppy writing. This is intentional embrace of absurdity. This is refusing to pretend that fiction needs to be logical in order to be meaningful. This is demonstrating that coherence is not a prerequisite for value. So, accept that absurdity is the default. Stop expecting the world to make sense. Stop demanding that life be logical. Stop fighting against the fundamental randomness of existence. The world is chaotic and contradictory and incoherent. And this is not a problem to be solved. This is reality to be accepted. Once you accept absurdity, once you stop demanding coherence, you gain peace. You stop being frustrated by the world failing to meet impossible standards. You start engaging with reality as it actually is, rather than as you wish it were. You learn to find humor in chaos. You learn to navigate randomness with grace. You learn to create meaning in a meaningless universe. That is what Gumball teaches. That is what wisdom requires. And that is what you can carry forward into your own life. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Accepting absurdity lets you breathe, but understanding that effort matters, even in a meaningless universe, gives you reason to keep moving forward. How Gumball can change your life. The Amazing World of Gumball is a show about a blue cat and his fish brother causing chaos in a small town. That is the premise. That is what it looks like on the surface. But underneath the absurdity, underneath the randomness, underneath the surreal art style and bizarre humor, there is something deeper. There is a philosophy for how to live. There is a guide for navigating a world that does not make sense. There is wisdom about self-acceptance and optimism and absurdity and meaning. And when you bring all these lessons together, when you see how they interconnect and support each other, you get a framework for building a life that is both realistic and joyful, both aware of problems and committed to solutions, both accepting of chaos and dedicated to creating meaning within that chaos. This is the final section. Here we bring all the lessons together. We look at how they form a complete worldview. We understand how they support each other. And we figure out how you can apply this philosophy to your own life. How you can take what Gumball teaches and use it to become stronger, wiser, happier, more resilient, more alive. The first lesson was accept that you are a disaster and love yourself anyway. Gumball is a mess. He makes terrible decisions constantly. He creates chaos wherever he goes. And the show never demands that he fix himself before deserving love. The show just accepts him as he is, flaws and all. This teaches you that self-worth is not conditional on perfection, that you can acknowledge all your problems and still deserve kindness, that being flawed does not make you broken. The second lesson was understand that reality is more flexible than you think. The world of Gumball operates by rules that change constantly. Physics is optional. Cause and effect are negotiable. Nothing is fixed. And this teaches you that the limitations you accept as absolute are often just habits of thought. That boundaries are more permeable than they seem. That you have more agency than you realize. That reality is malleable, and you can shape it more than you believe. The third lesson was accept that absurdity is the default. Nothing in Gumball makes sense. The world is random and chaotic and incoherent, and the show does not fight against this. The show embraces it. This teaches you to stop expecting life to be logical, to stop demanding that the world explain itself, to accept chaos as the fundamental nature of existence, and learn to navigate it with grace and humor. When you combine these three lessons, you get a complete philosophy for living. You accept yourself as you are, while recognizing that you can change more than you think, while also accepting that the world will never make complete sense. You hold all three truths simultaneously. You are flawed, and that is okay. Reality is flexible, and you have agency. Existence is absurd, and meaning is something you create rather than discover. This combination is powerful. It prevents the first lesson from becoming complacency. Yes, accept yourself as you are, but also recognize that you can grow and change and improve. You do not have to stay exactly as you are forever. You just do not have to hate yourself while you are growing. The second lesson prevents the first from becoming passive. You accept yourself, yes, but you also recognize that you can shape your reality, that you have power to change your circumstances. That acceptance does not mean resignation. The third lesson prevents the first two from creating false expectations. Yes, accept yourself. Yes, recognize your agency, but also understand that the world is fundamentally chaotic and you cannot control everything. Some things will go wrong regardless of your efforts. Some outcomes will be random. Some situations will defy logic. And this is not your fault. This is just how reality works. Accepting absurdity allows you to maintain self-acceptance and agency without falling into the trap of thinking you can or should control everything. These three lessons also reinforce each other. When you accept yourself as a disaster, when you stop demanding perfection from yourself, you gain emotional energy to experiment with pushing boundaries. You can try new things because failure does not threaten your sense of worth. You can take risks because mistakes do not make you worthless. Self-acceptance enables agency. When you understand that reality is flexible, when you recognize that you can shape your circumstances, you gain practical tools for managing the consequences of your flaws. You cannot eliminate your disasters, but you can change how you respond to them. You cannot stop being chaotic, but you can create systems that channel your chaos productively. Agency enables you to live with your flaws without being destroyed by them. When you accept absurdity, when you stop expecting the world to make sense, you gain peace. You stop being frustrated by your own contradictions. You stop demanding logical consistency from yourself. You accept that you can be both a disaster and someone worthy of love. You accept that you can have agency and still face random chaos. You accept that meaning and meaninglessness coexist. Acceptance of absurdity allows you to hold all the other truths without cognitive dissonance tearing you apart. Throughout the series, the Watterson family models this philosophy. They are disasters, all of them, Richard is unemployed and lazy. Nicole is overworked and stressed. Gumball and Darwin create chaos constantly. Anais is manipulative. They are not a functional family by conventional standards, but they love each other fiercely. They support each other through every crisis. They accept each other completely. They do not demand that any family member fix themselves before deserving belonging, and they understand that reality is flexible. They constantly find creative solutions to impossible problems. They bend rules. They exploit loopholes. They refuse to accept that circumstances are fixed. When they face eviction, they do not just accept homelessness. They fight, they scheme, they find alternatives. They use every bit of agency available to them. They demonstrate that being poor and being powerless are not the same thing, and they accept absurdity. They do not waste energy demanding that their bizarre world make sense. They just navigate whatever strange situation arises. A ghost possesses their house. They deal with it. Objects come to life. They adapt. Reality breaks. They figure it out. They do not get paralyzed by the inexplicable. They just keep functioning. They keep moving forward. They keep loving each other and supporting each other and creating meaning together, even though the universe provides no inherent meaning. This is the complete model. This is what it looks like to live well in an absurd world. Accept yourself. Exercise agency. Embrace chaos. Love fiercely. Keep moving. Create meaning. Do not wait for the world to make sense before you start living. Do not wait for yourself to be perfect before you allow yourself happiness. Do not wait for circumstances to be ideal before you take action. Just start. Just begin. Just engage with reality as it actually is, rather than waiting for it to become what you wish it were. Now, you might be thinking, this is just a cartoon, that these lessons do not apply to real life, because real life has actual consequences. And you are right that real life has stakes that cartoon life does not have. But the lessons still apply. In fact, they apply more urgently in real life, precisely because stakes are real. When failure has real consequences, you need self-acceptance even more. When circumstances have real impact, you need to recognize your agency even more. When the world is actually confusing and chaotic, you need to accept absurdity even more. Think about what your life would look like if you applied these lessons, if you stopped hating yourself for your flaws, if you accepted that you are messy and imperfect, and that this does not disqualify you from deserving good things. Your internal experience would change. You would stop the constant self-criticism. You would stop demanding impossible standards from yourself. You would give yourself the same compassion you hopefully give to others. And this internal shift would free up energy. Energy you currently waste on self-hatred could be redirected toward action, toward growth, toward creating the life you want. If you recognize that reality is more flexible than you think, if you stopped accepting limitations as absolute, if you started pushing boundaries and testing rules and discovering how much give the world actually has, your external circumstances would change. You would find solutions you previously thought were impossible. You would create opportunities that seemed unavailable. You would shape your reality more actively rather than just accepting whatever reality hands you. And this agency would give you hope, would give you reason to keep trying, would give you evidence that your efforts matter if you accepted that the world is fundamentally absurd, if you stopped expecting life to be logical and fair and comprehensible, If you made peace with chaos and randomness and inexplicability, your relationship with suffering would change. You would stop being angry at the universe for not making sense. You would stop feeling personally victimized by random bad luck. You would stop demanding explanations that do not exist, and this acceptance would give you peace, would let you experience what actually happens rather than constantly comparing reality to impossible standards, would allow you to find humor in chaos rather than being destroyed by it. These lessons work together to create resilience, real resilience, not the toxic kind where you just endure suffering without complaint, but the healthy kind where you accept reality, exercise agency within that reality, and maintain your humanity throughout, where you stay soft while being strong, where you keep your heart open while developing thick skin, where you love yourself and others even though everyone is flawed and the world is chaotic and nothing is guaranteed. Start with self-acceptance. This is foundational. If you hate yourself, if you require perfection from yourself, if you tie your worth to your achievements, everything else becomes impossible. You cannot exercise agency if you believe you do not deserve better circumstances. You cannot accept absurdity if you need the world to validate you by being fair. Self-acceptance comes first. Look at yourself honestly. See all your flaws, all your mistakes, all your disasters, and then decide that you are worthy of love anyway. Decide that being human, with all the mess that entails, is enough. Decide that you do not have to earn the right to exist. Then build agency. Start small. Find one area where you have been accepting limitations that might be negotiable. One rule you have been following that might be optional. One boundary that might be more permeable than you thought. Test it. Push gently. See what happens. You do not have to rebel against everything. You do not have to tear down every system. Just find one place where you can exercise more choice than you believed you had. One situation where you can shape your circumstances more actively. One problem where a creative solution might exist that you have not considered. Practice agency in small ways. Build evidence that your actions matter. Accumulate proof that you are not completely powerless. Then embrace absurdity. Stop demanding that your life makes sense. Stop trying to force coherence onto random events. Stop needing everything to fit into a narrative. Sometimes things just happen. Sometimes there is no lesson. Sometimes chaos is just chaos. And that is okay. You can still create meaning locally. You can still build purpose in your own sphere. You can still love people and work toward goals and enjoy experiences, even if none of it serves some grand cosmic purpose. Meaning does not have to come from the universe. You can generate meaning yourself. And that self-generated meaning is just as valid as any meaning handed down from external sources. This is the complete practice. Accept yourself. Exercise agency. Embrace absurdity. Do all three constantly. Let them support each other. Let them reinforce each other. Let them create a life that is both realistic and hopeful, both aware of limitations and committed to pushing them, both accepting of chaos and dedicated to creating pockets of order and beauty and meaning within that chaos. The Watterson family shows you what this looks like in practice. They are disasters who love themselves. They are poor people who exercise agency. They are inhabitants of an absurd world who create meaning anyway. They are not perfect. They are not role models in the conventional sense, but they are surviving and sometimes thriving in difficult circumstances. They are maintaining their humanity in an inhuman world. They are staying connected to each other when isolation would be easier. They are finding joy when despair would be justified. And if they can do it, you can do it. Your circumstances are different. Your challenges are different. But the principles are the same. Accept yourself as you are. Exercise whatever agency you have. Embrace the absurdity of existence. Love fiercely. Keep moving forward. Create meaning in a meaningless universe. Build connection in an isolated world. Find humor in chaos. Maintain hope without requiring certainty. This is not easy. This requires work. This requires practice. This requires constantly choosing the harder path of engagement over the easier path of resignation. But it is possible. The Watersons prove it is possible, and you can prove it too. So take these lessons with you. Carry them forward into your life. Let them shape how you think about yourself and your agency and your world. Let them guide your choices. Let them inform your responses. Let them help you navigate the chaos and absurdity and difficulty of existence. You are a disaster. Reality is flexible. Life is absurd. And none of that prevents you from building something beautiful, from creating something meaningful, from living well. That is what Gumball teaches. That is what wisdom requires. That is what you can carry forward into your own life. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of this community. Thank you for engaging with these ideas. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to subscribe to Gumballology. We create content like this because we believe stories matter. We believe animation teaches us how to live. We believe that paying attention to what shows say, really paying attention, can transform how you understand yourself and your world. Sleep well. Dream of chaos and love and meaning and hope. And when you wake up, carry these lessons with you. Let Gumball change your life. Let it make you braver. Let it help you accept yourself. Let it show you that being a disaster does not disqualify you from building something worth building. You are enough. You have agency. The world is absurd, and within that absurdity, you can create something that matters. I'll see you in the next one.